Being a dad is hard. It's high stakes. It takes a toll on our self-worth, mental health, and can be lonely. But why would we ever want to do something so important in isolation? Legacy Makers, a conversation for dads, is quite simply two normal dads having conversations about, you guessed it, being a dad. The highs, the lows, and the learnings along the way. We are four dads. We want to remedy the deficiency we see in community for dads, and we want to ruthlessly encourage dads on their journey to build lasting legacy for the faces they love the most.
All right, Eric, last time we were together, we were having a conversation. You were really smart. You're throwing out these acronyms. You talked about PBS, prioritize, boundaries, schedule. And when you talked about this priorities piece, this light bulb went off for me. It's actually from a book I read. So let me share it and then we can talk about it. But there's a guy named Greg McKeown from the UK that wrote a book called Essentialism, like what is essential in life. And if you want to read it, good book. But here's the first part that I think is the most important. He says, and this is not an English lesson, but it'll help us. He says that the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s and it was singular. So the word priority was, for 500 years, was only priority. And then he says this, he says, only in the 1900s did we pluralize the term and start talking about priorities. And I love this line. He said, illogically, we reasoned that by changing the word, we could bend reality. So here's his premise. Priorities is crap. Like, to say that you have multiple priorities is not an actual fit for how this word was. So I think his challenge is to prioritize our priorities. First of all, let's just, before we dive in, have you read that book? Any thoughts on it?
I haven't, but okay. I mean, now your Cliff Notes version
now
of
you don't have to read it.
Basically, priorities is crap, and we can all move on to the next book. But you know what? I actually, when you shared that, I feel better about some of the frustration I feel, both at work and on the home front. I mean, the amount of times I've sat in a meeting, and I would imagine that many people have had this same feeling of, we're going to talk about the work that matters most or the priorities for the year. And then the longer the meeting is, the more things get added. And people are like, just need somebody to boil this down. What is the most important thing? And these are the most important things. But then it's incredible.
Yeah. So I remember during COVID, like having an all hands meeting for our team. And I remember I was telling them like, hey, we're eliminating all the fluff. Like, these are the three most important priorities. And one of the youngest girls on our team was like, hey, Kevin, but which one is the most important? And what she wasn't trying to be a smart aleck. What she was asking is, when these things come into conflict, which do I choose? And just be real with you, when we think about being an intentional dad, in a lot of ways, it feels more overwhelming because it's like, now I have to be good at work and good at home and good in my marriage and good in my friendships. And it feels like we're adding to the plate. I've said it this way, that purpose shows us when to say yes. So purpose lets us know what we add to our list, and priority reveals when to say no. But I'm telling you, just like Kevin right here, I'm much better at purpose than I am at priority. Like, I am good at adding to the list and being intentional, but not in saying no. So I guess the question is, how do we actually prioritize? I'm trying to figure out that in my life, because it feels like we need to prioritize different things on different days and in different seasons.
Yeah, I love what you just said on prioritizing is really about no. We talked a little bit about that in our last episode, but things come at us so fast that it's very, there's a play date here, there's a birthday party, or this trip, that makes sense. I'll go do that in a couple of weeks. And to your point, it's almost like just a unconscious yes to everything. And so that really challenges me as I think about what I want to do family-wise, but at work, it's what's saying no. But I mean, I think as I think about prioritization, I think, again, we talk about this, but like, what does success look like? Mm-hmm. And it's going to be different to everybody, right? And it's very easy to skim over that exercise and say, oh, yeah, I know what that is. Like, I want to be these things. But I think pushing ourselves a little bit to sit down and really think about what is, at the end of the day, my kids are leaving. I want to prepare them for college. At 18 years old, I've got this window. What does success look like for that? What does success look like for you, Kevin, and me as we think about being husbands? as we being dads, as we're part of larger families, we're in our community. So there's different aspects that are really important. Our professional careers, what does it look like? Write it down, like be thoughtful about that. But I don't know if you can really think about your purpose and your prioritization without having a real good elevator pitch of someone where say, hey, Kev, like what's important to you? How would you define success? Because it's going to be different, but I think you got to like sit in that and actually sit in that and have clarity on what that looks like. So, I mean, that to me is first and foremost as you think about this whole prioritization exercise that needs to occur.
I think you're right. It's got to start long term. What does success look
Yeah.
like? Not short. What is long term? What is success? And then here's another S for you. What can be subtracted?
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit when we talked about boundaries and schedule, but if we say purpose tells us when to say yes and priority reveals when to say no, what can we say no to? And to me, this is not the easy one, but when I do it, like I feel better when I do it. I feel a lot more freedom.
Yeah, I think there's been situations in our life as in our last couple of years as a family that things were subtracted, not because we were smart and said, you know what, like we did the right thing. Like, we were forced in some instances, whether it be, travel ball things or whether it be activities at school that didn't end up working out, or there was a drum lesson situation where the teacher ended up like there's been, and I think about each of these things, most of the stuff that I am mentioning we probably said yes too quick. We didn't really think about the longer term impact because we didn't really start with what success looked like. It was like, oh yeah, sure, we'll do that. Oh yeah, we'll add that to the thing. And then as I think about the things that were subtracted, again, not because Brittany and I did anything intentional, it freed up so much. And so I see the power of this. I wanted, to your point, get better on, all right, like let's take a look. Do we really need to do that? Is that thing important?
Laura's better at this than me. And, this is, people can take this in different ways. We have a mutual friend, Larry Grays, who told me that he's talking in a Christian context here, but he says sometimes the Holy Spirit sounds a lot like your wife. So you can take that for sometimes, what you need to hear, even when you don't want to hear it, comes through your wife's voice. And Laura a lot of times asks me, okay, we can do this, but what are we going to stop doing?
Yeah, I'll tell you a real one back to that exact sentiment. So I love to coach my boys. I don't know if I love to coach my girls yet, my twins yet. They haven't started, and I don't know if they would listen to me, so I might not be the right coach. One of the biggest, I think about the last few years, one of the biggest sources of tension in Brittany and my just kind of day-to-day conversations was when I was coaching everything. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't understand why she was so whatever about it, right? Like she was fine. She was good, but like she was frustrated because, all right, I'm gone and now I'm going to go for 2 hours in the evening. And the twins were a year old. But to your point, when I finally said, okay, you know what, I'll be more thoughtful. Here's what I will coach. I see it. I see what I was missing at home. I understand her frustration more. But to your point, sometimes you need that extra accountability partner in that alignment with your spouse and family on, okay, if we need to lock arms on why this is important. It may not be what you want, but it may be longer term the best thing for you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to just skip talking about any of that because Laura will listen and then I'll have to admit that she was right.
Yeah.
But she is right most of the time. Okay, so we talked about what does success look like long term? How do we subtract? And then what do we need to start doing? One of the things I'm reminded of is the things that we're talking about are all good things. I mean, we talked about in one of the other episodes like that. What you talked about? They went bankrupt gradually and then suddenly. Mm-hmm. And so there are certainly bad things we can do. But a lot of times it's a lot of good things that are in the wrong order. So let's get philosophical for a second. The philosopher Augustine, I called him Augustine, but I think if you're smart, you're supposed to call him Augustine. He said this back in the day. He said that he talked about this concept of disordered loves. This is really fascinating to me. He said, it's not usually that we love the wrong things. It's that we love the right things in the wrong order.
Wow.
So it's not that we love the wrong things, it's that we love the right things in the wrong order. And so for me, this starting piece, I think, has to be putting them in the right order and then taking action on it. So, yeah.
That's so good, man. I can, again, to be really transparent, I can remember about 10 years ago in my career, same thing. The career ended up being, I loved my wife, loved my family. My boys were younger at the time, but I let that creep in and the order shifted, which sometimes it has to shift. There might be you're getting ready for something really big at home. You need to rotate towards the family, or you've got this big thing at work or in the community. So I don't think it always, okay, my 1, 2, and 3 are always going to be my 1, 2, and 3. I don't believe in that, but my work became my one way too often. And we got to a spot where we really, we had to end up, rolling our sleeves up and changing that. But there was hurt involved in that too, because for too long, Brittany felt like, okay, well, I'm not now where, in the right order. So disordered, it's a great comment, because then there's no shame or guilt on the fact, hey, look, I love this part of my life that might not be my wife or kids. It's just, how do you ensure that the right focus is on at the right times and you're not, basically in the wrong spot too often.
Yeah. And the thing that I think as a dad of young kids that I have to remember is that like my relationship with Laura has to come first.
Yes.
Like in the right order. And that somebody told me one time that when we got married, they said, when you have kids, it's like you'll have people that love you more than anything that are conspiring to tear your marriage apart. And I feel like that's true. They're not doing it on purpose, that they want to be the center of the universe. And if we don't keep that priority. So you were sharing this commencement speech about the 5 balls. Talk about this.
Yeah. So Brian Dyson was a former CEO of Coca-Cola, and he gave a commencement speech at Georgia Tech. And I don't know if it's officially called the 5 balls, but that's what people.
I felt really good about Coca-Cola when you said Georgia Tech, and you lost me a little bit there.
No. Listen, this was.
They're really smart.
I think that University of Georgia there had somebody else scheduled or something. So he couldn't make that one. But so this was in the early 90s, and one of the anecdotes that I've heard from this, it just resonates with me, and wrote it down because I didn't want to misquote it, but this was directly from the archives. It says, imagine life as a game in which you were juggling some 5 balls in the air. You name them. So again, he's saying they can be different, but the ones he named are work, family, health, friends, and spirit.
Okay, I'm going to just work, family, health, friends, and spirit were his 5.
Yep. And you're keeping all of these in the air. You will soon understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. But the other 4 balls, in this instance, family, health, friends, and spirit, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, they will be irrevocably scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. They will never be the same. You must understand that and strive for balance in your life. So, let's beat that up a little bit. First of all, I'm a terrible juggler, so this stresses me out.
Yep, I'm screwed.
Yeah. But as I think about sticking with that metaphor, I don't know why when I thought about this, Kevin, like one of the things I thought about is I don't have to be looking really cool and like that I have it together and juggling like perfect. Oh my gosh, that guy's a circus juggler guy. I just have to keep him up. I got to figure it out. And so the goal is really to not drop those balls. It's not about looking like I have it all together. It's not about being perfect. It's just, I got to do my very best to not drop the balls. And so I think this gives me that like, I keep thinking about dropping a ball as an F as a grade, right? If you're looking at a grade system. For me, I could still get a C. But I didn't drop the balls, and I'm keeping them up. And I think we've got to make sure, we kind of hit on this a few minutes ago. There are going to be times in our lives, like back to the time I mentioned where Brittany and I were, I prioritized things wrong. In that season, she had to be the one ball that was 100% A+. It wasn't good enough in that moment for me to be C+ with her. And her being A+ meant that maybe work or maybe what I was doing in the community got deprioritized. I didn't want it to drop it, but like she was going to get my best in that season, and we communicated that. And I think that's what I take away from this is we've got to realize when is the right time. It's non-negotiable. I got to be A+. In these 4 areas that are vital. And when well, I may be okay to say, hey, hon, like I got this work right now is crazy. This is what I got. I'm going to need a week or two. Just know that but it's communicating that.
Yeah. To me, it goes back to what we started with, this idea of what is success long-term, because what I've got to decide in advance of when things come into conflict, what am I going to choose? You and I, in our professional worlds, we both have had interactions with food, quick service restaurants.
Yeah.
So Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, there's thinking of these things. In those environments, if you're going through a drive-through, they have competing priorities. One is speed, like trying to get you through the drive-through faster. We won't name names, but some companies do it better than others. And then, like, is the food safe?
Yeah.
In the environments I've been in, they talk about speed a lot more. But they know when those two come in conflict, they have to choose safety, like the food being safe. I feel like in my marriage, in my role as a dad, in my role as at work, I may think about things more. Like I may spend more time at work in a given weekday than I spend with my kids. But I have to be able to decide in advance when they come into conflict, especially over time, which one am I going to choose? And that's where those 4 balls, I think, helps do it, because some of them, if they're not prioritized, the harm is irrevocable. Yeah. It's not something that can be repaired. So,
and I think it's good that you said, I think impact isn't necessarily driven by time. Mm-hmm. There's no way, based on where we are in our careers, that we are going to spend as much time based on the roles we play at our homes, right? As a provider, for me, sole provider. And if I spent as much time with my children or my wife that I do at work, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I think, so we also feel this burden sometimes, but the reality is once all the kids are in school, like even if you were home all day, if you didn't have a job, like they're going to spend a certain amount of time doing other things. But impact, that's the word you said. Impact is key, making the most of those times and then having the right priorities. So here's my challenge I'm taking for me is, how do I make sure that I have my loves ordered, that I'm in the right order, and when things come into conflict, I know which one I'm going to choose, and then I'm going to add a third thing. I like what you said about the juggling, that it doesn't have to look good. See, I care a lot about what people think, but what really matters is that I don't drop the ball, not that I look cool when I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think for me, when I say there's one thing, I say one. I don't add 2 or 3 like you just did. But there's a lot. Man,
you're better at prioritizing your priorities.
I don't think about that. I don't think so. But the one thing that probably wasn't where I was at the beginning of this conversation that really spoke to me was this notion of start.
Yeah.
I think we can admire it. We can have a plan. We can do all the things we talked about and lay out the steps. But sometimes it's just good to start. Get it going. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can iterate along the way. And so that would be my challenge if you're listening to this. Don't make this so intimidating. It's just, you got to start. You just got to take that step, man. So enjoyed the conversation today. I'm glad we went deeper on that piece of it. And we'll talk to y'all next time.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to Legacy Makers with Kevin Scott and Eric Blumenthal. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.